follows around the corner, so we're going to make a pumpkin. Hi, I'm Myra with Boutique Paint. Thank you for joining me. I am taking this block of wood, which is a 2x6, and I have cut it, and it doesn't matter what the measurement is that you cut it. And then I just 45'd the edges. I did the bottom ones a little bit less of a 45, or took less of the wood off than the top. And then I'm going to just sand the edges real quick. And if you don't have a way to A, have scrap wood, or B, have a saw, you can just go to Home Depot and ask them to cut, a piece of wood from a 2x6. Or you can, sometimes they have scrap piles, and so I would dig through that and then ask if you could buy something from the scrap pile. So I'm going to stain this first, and it also you don't need the 45. You can do this with a square block too. But first what I'm going to do is I'm going to stain it. And I'm using our Pure Home Paint, I believe this is mahogany. And you don't really have to do the whole thing. And it's okay if there's imperfections in this. It's just okay. This I pulled out of the scrap pile. It was actually going to go into the outdoor fire pit pile, this piece. And we have a lot of scrap. And I know most people don't have a lot of scrap sitting around unless you or your other half does projects. We're just going to give this a quick coat, and then we'll let it dry. Now I'm going to put this so I'm not... And you can just, if you want to, instead of painting the whole thing, you can just paint the edges of this. Because in reality, we're probably just going to take down the edges. But then, I say stuff like that, and then I'm like, oh, do I want to do a little bit more? So you do it at whatever way you think you might want. Let's get a little. So the board's dry now, and you could skip the paint step if you'd like and just do the step after this right onto the wood if that's more your look of your house. I'm going to go ahead and paint this Summer Crush DIY paint. Such a pretty color. Perfect pumpkin color. So now that this is painted and dry, I want a little bit of the underneath stain to show through. So I'm just going to take, this is a baby wipe, but you can take a wet paper towel and just go along. And you don't want it perfect, you just want it to come through a little bit. And that's why I was saying you can just do the edges if you want for this, but if you want to do a little bit in the center, you could do the whole thing and then wipe back some of the center. There we go. Get a little bit more on this side. We're going to be using our one of our newer stencils, which is Vintage Corners. And I'm going to use the bigger one of these two. And I've already put some repositionable glue on this, and it helps if you, no, that is the right side. Okay, I thought I didn't flip it. So we're going to take a stencil brush, and I'm hoping this will work because this had a bunch of paint on it. I didn't clean it well, and so I cut it off. So we'll see how this works. I just cut the end off, and you can see it's all jagged and funky. And this is just going to be a light. We're not going to super try to put a lot of paint in this area. Just want a little lightness. And I'm just pouncing. Got a little heavy there. And I could probably take a paper towel and lighten it up a little bit, but I think it'll be okay. Normally, I'd put the paint on it and then I'd pounce it onto the piece of paper and then I'd do it, but I'm just scraping it off. And you're not supposed to go straight from the paint container, you know, from your brush. Just so you know, I always cheat. You should, if you pick up a couple plates from the dollar store, those are perfect for putting the paint on. Or some plastic ones. I like the just the cheapy ceramic ones because you can just keep washing them then, and you're not throwing them away. So I think that's about what I want there. Pull the stencil straight up, and perfect. So I'm going to use the sunflower leaves for this. So we're just going to put a little cornstarch in. And you could do this either with the clay or the casting resin. Casting resin is a little bit stronger if, you know, you have little ones around that might need to pick this up and play with it a little bit, and you might want to think about the casting resin. Otherwise, if you know it's just going to sit there and be pretty, the clay is a good thing. Kids are just, you know, they have to touch everything. Unless you put it on a high shelf. Get a little bit of the excess off here. Put that in there. See how there's all these extra lines and cracks? I don't want that. I want it to be. And so just put it back in there and push. There we go. And well, still, I should have used a little bit newer clay, but that's all right. Sometimes the bigger pieces, it's easier to use with newer clay. So now we're going to paint these little leaves some green, and I'm using a regular bristle brush for this. Whenever you're painting, and I know I've said this till you're blue in the face, but if you use something that'll push down the clay while it's still wet, you'll lose some of the detail. So we're just gonna use the bristle because you're less likely to push, and it gets into all those little nooks and crannies good. before I glue these to the pumpkin, I'm just going to get a little bit of wax on it. And these are still wet. They're both wet paint and wet clay. And so I'm doing this because I'm doing a video, but I would suggest just, you know, giving it a little bit more time. I did dry it a little bit with my hairdryer just on cool setting, just to speed up the process a little bit. But if you're, I mean, it's, well, yeah, it's getting on my brush, so you don't want that, because I reuse my wax brushes over and over again. So I'm just going to put a little bit on this. And the reason why I'm waxing this is because I want to put a little bit of decrepit dust on these. But then I also have kind of this funky, rusty color powder, which I think was a DIY experiment. We every now and then get these surprises in our orders, and so this was one of them, which was awesome. I've used the heck out of it, and I really wish that they would produce it. But there's all kinds of things on the market that you can get if you're wanting to do this extra step. But I just thought a little bit of rust might be kind of cool. Oh, I put it on there on the paper, and then I dipped it right into the thing. Wasn't thinking. And then I think I'll get a new brush that doesn't have anything on it, and just kind of do, you know how the leaves start just kind of turning that rust color in the fall. So that's why I thought it'd be fun to just add a little bit. But that being said, you could just add a little bit more of the decrepit dust or a dark wax, just to give it a little bit of detail, a little bit extra. So while I'm waiting for my heat gun to heat up, I'm going to go ahead, and you may recognize these sticks from last week when we did our little mushrooms. And I thought this would make a cool stem with the moss on it and all. So I'm going to try cutting them with the wire cutters, and I'm hoping that will work. And they're kind of small for the stick, so I may have to just break it. Oh, that worked okay. Nice. So my hope is I can just glue it right on. And that looks like it might be a little tall for what I'm wanting, so I'm going to try that again. See if I can break it. All right. Now I could use that one for a little one, for maybe a little pumpkin. So we'll just glue that one just right on top. And so I'm using hot glue. Normally I don't necessarily like using the hot glue, but it'll dry quickly, so you're not standing here or trying to figure out how to make this stay up there while you're doing, while the glue's drying. Kind of got glue everywhere. I'll give that a second of holding on to it. Try to get some of the excess glue off. And then we'll put our leaves on the front here. Let's see. I did it that way. So a little bit of it could stick up. I should have planned that a little bit better on how that was going to be positioned. Got free floating leaves here. Don't think I like that, so I'm going to pull that off. I'm just going to pull off the hot glue. And that didn't stick so well because this is still a little damp. So make sure you're doing all your drying all the way, or use the other glue. Use I can't think of the glue we usually recommend. Tidy Bond, I think is the name of it. There we go. And you're done. And I've made a mess. So that's it for this week. If you have any questions about the products we used, you can go to our website at www.boutiquepaint.com. And thank you so much for joining me. Bye.